Hey friends, what's going on? This is another one with Fun with Azure. This time part 17 in Synapse Studio. And it's actually also the sixth part of the DevOps series. So let's go into the agenda for today. So we're basically checking out some typical release errors that I got last time. And possibly also discuss the service principle that is definitely important when it comes to releases. So let's scroll down here a bit, and just to recap, right? We did basically go through a complete release cycle of code, including the repos and all that jumbo jumbo with the pull requests, with the publish branch. Then we moved it to the, like I said, to the publish branch. We had these ARM files, and then basically built those that release job to push that into the Synapse QA workspace, right? And then obviously here we can QA this further, and then eventually release it to production, right? So let's head over to the environment that we have. And again, here's the dev, right? Here's the QA workspace, right? I have the QA workspace actually open. You can see it's empty. I did delete those artifacts that we generated initially through the deployment. And let me just go to the release here. That's the one that I want to show. And you can see here on the left-hand side, we have the releases. Here we have the new release pipeline, which is basically the master. And you can see it actually indicates that it failed, right? So interesting, right? And then we have here the different releases, right? And we can definitely click into those releases, right? And here I'm in release 7, right? And there's that concept of edit a release and edit a pipeline. So with the release, you're basically just adding basically the copy of the release. With the pipeline, you're adding sort of the template to it, right? Keep those differentiations in mind. And then here you can basically switch between these others and be happy about, you know, what the others, or modify them. That's actually the extent. What I noticed here, you can't really see all of them, right? So it's only just like you see here I have 6 selected, so I don't see 2 and 1, and I'm not getting to it from here. So this seems to be a GUI bug. Just in case someone else has a similar thing. I get to 3, but 2 and 1 is not accessible to me here. Okay, so let's go back to the releases. Let's create a new release, so release 8, and let's go through that process. I'm just gonna use the defaults for now, okay? And what this basically is, the dialog here is a new release pipeline, and it's really misleading to call this pipeline when this is called pipeline on the left hand side, right? This is like a run of an existing pipeline to release something, right? So add this, and obviously in production you would use other comments to do that. And then let's run this, and we can actually click into that, and then it brings that window up here, and you can see there's preparing an agent job, so there's activity going on, and we can actually see it into a live log, right? This is happening as we speak. You see it initialized the job, it downloaded the artifact, and as expected, it throw this error, right? And this kind of, I went through this when I initially built the release job, so just want to share my experience here. So I click on that one, and then I see here this text, right? And obviously I can read through all of this, and I did. The interesting part that I found was here on the bottom, right? And keep this little scroller in mind here, because this is easy to overlook, especially when you hover away. It's gonna be less visible, and when you hover over it, it comes a bit stronger in terms of the color and recognition, but it's still kind of hard to recognize, and it's needed to be able to scroll to the right. And basically what it says is the principal does not have the required Synapse RBAC permissions to perform this action, right? So let's understand what really is going on here, right? So let's go back to this visual. So I have a job here, right? This job is able to, well, is it able to authenticate? I would say yes, because we already tried pushing code, right? But basically once we start pushing code, and pushing code would require that we write this code into the QA Synapse Workspace, that's where we get the error. So if we had an error earlier, that would indicate that, okay, maybe the authentication isn't even working, right? But that piece actually is working. So it makes sense that, hey, what security context does this run under? And does this process here, this release job, which at the end of the day, it's just a job that runs something, and have enough permissions to write to that QA workspace or to any destination workspace. And you can see there's an access box on the QA resource group, which is, by the way, not on the dev resource group, right? And what I wanted to convey with that is that you have to make sure that the service principal, basically, or that security context of this job has proper permissions on that destination resource group, right? And destination workspace, right? Synapse Workspace. So when we go back to here and look at this error message one more time, and scroll to the right, then there is a way actually to copy this value. If I'm not messing this up, let me go here. This is the value that we're gonna need, right? So let me just copy this one here real quick out of that window. Hopefully I'm not fat fingering it. Okay. So I did hit Control C, obviously, and then see our little slider here, our scroll bar, our scroller here is hiding again. But so this is the error message. Just also so you know, there's a previous task, next task. I find this quite helpful. You can go through all the pieces. So quite detailed logging here, and this is definitely helpful to know what's going on. Now normally you would not sit here and watch this as it does the work, but once it failed and notified you about the failure, you can set up email notifications and this and all that kind of stuff. Then you can go in here and see what's going on. So with that service principal, let me head over to the QA side, to the QA Synapse Workspace, right? And then I'm just gonna add in that I go to manage, right? That service principal. So I go to manage, go to access control, go to add, and then now be careful here not to grant too high permissions, right? Typically artifact publisher is what you want to grant. I also see some customers granting Synapse admin permissions for those type of jobs. Not recommended. So typically artifact publisher is what you need to grant. Okay, so this is now added, and the Synapse Workspace looks good. And remember, right, there's nothing out there yet. It's basically a blank workspace. So let's go back to that job here, and then there's multiple ways now we could go about this. So I could go release, and you see this failed, right? So there's a button here that says redeploy, right? So that's definitely one option. We could do this. I think there's also a deploy multiple here, but I don't want to do that. Let me just poke around here. There's some old view. I don't want to see that though. So that's definitely one option. I could do this. Now the other option I have is also, instead of running this, I could just go to releases and create a new release, and then you would see a release 9 entry here, right? So let's do both, right? Let's do first release 8, and then go here and do the redeploy, right? And currently deployed release 8, to be deployed release 8. Here we have further information to all these pieces, and there's a whole lot more that obviously can be configured. Release this, and we say release, right? And then it's basically doing a thing again, going out there, running the agent for the job, and trying to get this code, the script file in the pipeline, into that QA workspace. Okay, and hopefully, sometimes there's a bit of a time lag that I noticed, but hopefully this takes it and pushes the code out, and we go over here to the destination and refresh. You may already see the code coming in. Obviously it takes a bit to refresh, but develop, you see already the notebook is there. Okay, that's a good sign. And then what about the pipeline? Is that already there? Okay, so there's like only a global refresh kind of button. Okay, no items found. I'm pretty sure if I hit refresh here, it's gonna show up. Sometimes wish this would come like automatically, that refresh, and I don't have to click it, right? Okay, so here's my pipeline. So it looks all good, right? So let me look at the job here. This is still running. That's interesting. All right, but that should be done any second now. Okay, and it's done now. Okay, so that's a good sign, right? So the adding the service principal there did actually help. Now, the way I set this release job up is probably not how you would do it in production. I want to point this out real quick, and let me show you that. So if I go releases again, and you can see now release 8, it actually says cleared. Before I show you the service principal setup, let me do the other way of executing this. So when I remember, we did basically, we were here in release 8 and we redeployed, right? That's kind of how we executed this. But when I go releases, and before I do that, let me head over to QA and delete those 2 artifacts here, because I do want to have basically that sort of a test mechanism on my end to make sure that they really get pushed out. Sometimes jobs, they may notify you about success, but in reality they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So if I see these files being pushed again, then I have more clarity on, hey, this actually did work. Okay, so here I have release 8. So releases. So now I'm gonna go create a release, right? And I'm just accepting the defaults. Another release. And let me add another release. Here we go. And then create. And see, now it's basically taking up a number and goes to 9. I think you can actually name those as well. This is a matter of naming convention and how you want to do this within your team, and definitely requires a DevOps engineer as input. But so this is kind of running now, and it's basically doing the exact same thing, right? And you can actually see here, downloading the artifacts. This is where it takes the ARM files, the ARM template files, right, and pushes those out. And then in the next step, this is where it does the handshaking and all of that. and then tries to actually read these ARM files, the parameter file and the actual ARM file to the workspace. And you can see here when I look at this, right? Check status 200, successfully deployed. My pipeline of type pipeline, message accepted. So this looks quite well here. And with a larger release, this obviously could take a bit depending on how much code you have, but normally it's a relatively quick process. I have not seen this even in larger deployments taking more than 10 minutes. Okay, so this worked, so we're good here, right? And when I go back to the releases, we have another entry here, and obviously a green. And we always can go back into the release, right? Like I go here, release 7, and then I could go into the logs, right? And then I could go here to jump around here, go to 9, and then see that one, go to the logs. So this is pretty cool stuff. Let me show you one thing that I really think is important. And I can actually do this within here. So when I have that open, so release 9, and I didn't want to go here, but I want to go edit. Let's do the release for now, okay? I go here. This is the Synapse job or task that we added. And you can see this is when I created this release, right? What I told DevOps, Azure DevOps is, hey, this is our display name. This is where our template, our ARM template is located. This is where our parameters are located. And this is how I want you to authenticate out of DevOps to the Synapse workspace. And then I hit that manage, right? Let me do that. Not here. Let me go through, but just to give you an idea. So there's definitely different options what you can use here. So when I did this initially, so I go release, I go new this time. This is here with that button, right? So not over here now. Now we're generating a new release pipeline. Keep that in mind. So I go new. And then I get this layer, and let me make sure I can still remember. So I did empty job, okay, and then I click that one job, that blue link here. Even though that window is still visible, I click here, and then I go here. Let me see. Did I mess it up now? Okay, I have to add this plus button here. This is what's easy to overlook, right? This plus button. And then here I have the Synapse workspace deployment, so I do an add, and then I click on that one, and now I can basically select sort of for that release job the pieces, right? So I would select the template and the template parameters, and that's easy, right? We're basically just pointing back to our and obviously I haven't configured this yet for this release, but in the other one you would basically just point back to that publish workspace, right? And pick up the ARM file there and then the parameter file there, right? What's important here is that piece here, and this is what I wanted to discuss. So when you go manage, you can see those service connections. And this is basically how DevOps communicates with Synapse. And when I go new service connections, and typically you want to do a resource manager type as a connection type, and scroll down, say next, and you see there's quite an amount of different choices here, quite interesting. And then you say next here. What I did here with this project is I used that automatic, right, which says here is recommended, but for a fact in many projects you should check out if a service principal manual is available, and that's most commonly what I see. But managed identity may also be possible. So I would recommend check out those two as well as alternatives to make sure that you use the latest and greatest. For this project here, I didn't do that, but definitely recommend spending some time on this. I do actually have a link on this as well. Let me go to the slides, and when we go here, we have another one that talks to this, right? So there's a DevOps Labs out there. By the way, this is a great resource for learning Azure DevOps, even in way more detail than I was able to do that in those couple of videos. But I find I looked through this DevOps Labs quite a bit, and definitely very inspirational, and got a lot of good ideas out of here. But this is basically how you create a service principal for a resource manager service connection. So check that out. Basically step-by-step instructions on how to set this up. Quite helpful. Okay, so I think this kind of concludes our discussion on DevOps, and of course there's a lot more that could be covered. I may come back to this, but for now I'm continuing the Synapse Studio series next time with Microsoft Purview, because Synapse is basically a general service that uses a lot of other services. So to really know Synapse, you need to know quite a bit of other services. So Purview is one of them. The other one that I also still need to cover is Key Vault, how to work effectively with Key Vault. And I think when I do Key Vault, we may want to get back to this one here, so then we can actually do a release or the whole process, including Key Vault as well. That could be a fun exercise. So DevOps is always going to be a part of these labs going forward. Now that we have the foundations and can understand sort of the minimal pieces, it makes sense to edit with the other stuff. Okay, hopefully this was helpful, and talk to you guys soon. Thank you. Cheers.